It's good afternoon to Simon. It's good morning to John. Gents, thanks for
Hello.
joining us.
Hello. Hi
Great
to
to be
you.
here.
We're
Yeah,
we're
indeed.
some of us are in different hemispheres, aren't we, John?
We are, yes, I am in the UK, and so I am nursing a cup of coffee. It's early in the morning, and
Well,
the kids are
enjoy.
getting ready for school somewhere over there.
Oh, good. Well, sing out if you need to go and sort them out. Gents, you are the host of the Occupational Philosophers, a not so serious business podcast that I have been listening to. And I finally reached out to ask, would you join us here at Yellow Shelf? And lucky for me, you said yes. And we made this happen in different hemispheres. So I'm going to fire away whoever wants to take these questions or you share or add your own input. But tell us what we need to know about your podcast.
Well, I'll start, Joe. Just the first thing that you caught there was it's a not so serious business podcast. That's quite important for this because I think we realise there's quite a lot of business podcasts out there. I think we might describe them as a bit earnest sometimes, and they have programs and ideas about how to do things, and they're very, very prescriptive sometimes, and maybe a bit serious. So we decided we wanted to go another way, and so a slightly more irreverent approach to things, I guess. Wouldn't you say, Simon?
I would say so. We always like to think it's a more of a conversational, dinner party vibe we like to have. We say to our guests, so we pop open a bowl of Shiraz and let's say, we get a taxi at the end, but maybe if the podcast has gone really well, we kick onto a bar, get a bit loose, and then, possibly come home at 9 a.m. the next morning with stuff written on your face with somebody's Sharpie and your kids start crying. But that's the vibe we go for. And again, I find relaxed conversations are good conversations. And, there's I think too much seriousness in the world as well. So, which is why we wanted to go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we try to lighten the mood a little as we go. So we've got different segments in the show. A listener favorite, or certainly a favorite for us, is where we do thought experiments, which is, as you might know, obviously philosophers exercise their minds with deep, profound thoughts with thought experiments, and they would explore ideas. And so we try to do that as well. And the accusation that these are almost like lightweight game show quizzes akin to something you might have seen in the 1970s is deeply offensive and not in any way
Probably,
true.
really.
Yeah.
Probably, given the amount of effort gone in. And look, on the themes, we like to mash up the worlds of creativity and curiosity. And John likes to introduce us to a healthy dose of philosophy as well. But I like to think it's more because he's getting old and he's trying to grow some sort of goatee beard. I'm not sure in Australia it lands that well, but in the UK apparently it's quite stylish, and you wander around, broking, so to speak. So
This is quite recent, by the way. Quite recent.
Looking sharp, can I say?
very great.
Yes, I'm really curious for you to share how you guys know each other being in different hemispheres. How did this relationship, this banter, this podcast come together?
I'll
let Simon start on that one.
Right, now, John and I worked together in the UK for, let's say, about 20 years ago, which might be shocking because you might think, what were you, 10? Because, we know your faces. But
Boys, can I just jump in there and say I was living in the UK 20 years ago. So if maybe I was 10 as well.
Were you in the Camden Palace Thursday night?
I think it was Friday nights for me. I was probably found more in the West, that West London area. But
West is best.
West End girls.
West End girls. I lived in the West.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
Okay, so you would have been Shepherd's Bush.
Fulham, yeah, that was.
All right, I didn't go that far west.
Oh, okay.
In a way. Anyway, we worked together 20 years ago for like a corporate training company that did some very high-end work with a lot of companies in the UK. So John and I did a lot of jobs together there. Now, interestingly, I was sort of semi-sacked from that role, but that also allowed me to go on a more creative path, which helped me bring it all back together.
I should add, Joe, that was nothing to do with me.
No, nothing to do with it.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
But like outside of that role, John, would you say, where we sort of connected?
Yeah. We were there was fun to be had in the role, I suppose. But yeah, we had a lot of fun outside of that. We used to go to music festivals together in Glastonbury. We
Cool.
go to some of the salubrious spots in London, nightclub spots, and even traveled a little bit in South America together. Didn't we? I think
Ended up in Peru for
in Peru for a little bit.
Very nice.
So, yeah.
So yeah, so our paths crossed many times in
That's
unusual ways.
In that, I guess we're both like novelty seekers. We like to embrace the new. We're curious, and we've got an
Right.
interest in all things creative. I always come from a, as a recovering professional artist, have painted and designed and sculpted many things for many years. John's got an interest and a background in writing and comedy. So we like to think, art and humor can unlock
Yes.
some really nice thinking as well.
Great backstory, gents. So, gents, tell us how you get from working together 20 years ago, travel, big nights out. Tell us how the podcast started.
Well, I guess there was a little bit. I had a fledgling idea that it kind of came from the name a little bit first. I always had this thought that you have occupational psychologists working in organizations. And I started to riff on the idea that maybe organizations needed occupational philosophers as well, that would bring curiosity and thought and questions into the mix, within organizations, so they would be more creative and innovative.
Yes.
And obviously, knowing Simon with his creative background and me with that sort of eye on curiosity, I thought there was a good mix here. Yeah. There's something in it. And so we just started to explore it from there. I think that kind of just sparked a conversation, didn't it, Simon? I think.
Yeah, well, we've collaborated on a little bit of cross-hemisphere work as well. And John said, hey, we've done some, I think during lockdown, we had a fair bit more time to think and ruminate on life, as a lot of people did. And he said, look, we should be able to do a bit more collaboration. And I've written a book, and I thought I haven't got the appetite for another book. Yep. I thought, bang, let's start a podcast. And also, I think on a serious note, collaborating creatively for me is so much more interesting than doing it by yourself, to get the ability to sort of argue, challenge each other's ideas, argue in a fun way, I should say, build on each other, build things, bring in different thoughts. So for me, that's really important, rather than trying to sort of, for me again personally, rather than trying to blaze that sort of path by yourself. So it was born from there.
Yeah. Great. And what about your guests? Tell me, you've got guests from all different hemispheres. You sort of work out, each episode and bring them to the table. Really interesting guests, and guests that I don't always see on other podcasts. I think that's, can I just say that? Because sometimes you get the same, and that's fine. But yeah, I think that's what I like about your podcast. There's guests that, I often have to look up because I don't know them.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear, actually, Joe, because I think that is something we're seeking there. So the aim is to try and get, interviews with people who might have taken the path less well traveled, as it were. So they might be coming from a bit left field position on stuff, and certainly they express creativity in different ways, and that's what we're interested in: is how does their creativity show itself, and then what can we learn from that? So they don't always fit into that sort of corporate world necessarily, and they're not always just people coming with a framework and 5 steps to this and 3 steps to heaven and 7 ways to do this.
Trying to sell it to you as well.
Sure.
We do have a framework.
We know.
We don't mind if they have a book. If they're trying to pitch a framework, then we kind of sort of get a little bit twitchy. But, and of course, it's that idea, the business world isn't linear like that. And so we're interested in just people who want to explore the whole realms of, as I say, curiosity and creativity, and just what they've learned along the way. So we look to then different disciplines. So we've had, philosophers, naturally, because I'm really fascinated to get philosophers on, such as Julian Bagini, who's a big UK philosopher here, neuroscientists, authors, academics, circus performers, so we really did sort of reach out to try and get people who would give us
Python writers as well.
Monty Python. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. You kind of go, wow.
From what's that movie? Austin Powers. Yeah. Austin Powers actors. And
so comedians. That's it.
Yeah. And again, I like to think as well, business lessons can be quite linear. Do these 5 things, bang, 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 boom. Be like me, be hyper successful. people. But, as we know, and John said, the world is a curly whirly place. So I like to bring in some people who've got a bit of a curly whirly mindset,
And look, there's plenty of
I should say,
sorry, John.
I was going to say, I think one of the things as well is, why this podcast as well is, as you probably would see as well, is you just get a chance to meet great people, learn lots, feel like a massive failure, I think, for the most part, don't we, Simon, when we meet these people who've done brilliant things?
The bios are about this long and we just go,
we go, what? They've like crammed 3 lifetimes into one.
Yeah.
But just fascinating people to talk to. And they helped us build the manifesto. So we've got on the website, we've got a manifesto, which is, the manifesto created by guests of how to be a occupational philosopher. And so there's some fascinating insights that we start to build together into something wonderful. It's actually portrayed as a tree on the website, isn't it, Simon?
I know, guys. Very creative.
And if you're listening and thinking manifesto, you'll see what we did there. Now, I was looking at some of these earlier, some of my favorites. In order to be creative, don't be an insular asshole, from one of our guests. Another one, take more hot showers. And again, I like this one, fail again, but fail better. Which I think is a lovely little way of thinking around that whole fail fast way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as John said, it's like doing I don't want to big it up too much. It's like doing a mini MBA, because each guest you research and you find out about their world. And when I facilitate, I drop in stuff all the time and go, oh, this has been spoken about. So as a way of just turning your own brain on, that's great. The guest episodes are my faves by far. Not that I dislike talking to John, but
yeah, well, we do some in-between episodes between guest episodes, and that's a chance for us to explore topics that we find interesting in the whole realm of curiosity, philosophy, and creativity. So they're more short and sharp, bursty fruits of sort of delight, as it were, as we might call them. I don't know what other people think, but that's what we think. We rub our brains together for 15 minutes and try and spark something interesting.
I think you do that. I would recommend any listeners here to give it a go, because I think that definitely happens. Guys, have you ever gotten in the same room together and done a podcast in all this time as yet?
No, we haven't. So I suppose that will need one of us to undertake a long flight to the other place.
I did it a couple of years ago, and we thought about trying to do it, but we just went out and had a big night.
No, that's all right. I was just curious because I think
we weren't quite sure how to set up the microphone. It was
too hard.
Challenge. So
and the sound quality in the pub's not very good.
Look, that's but yeah, it's funny you mentioned your website, because I actually had it as a point to say, hey, if anyone's here is listening, go to your website. That's that. And the tree was very creative. I loved that. Gents, how do we connect with you? I definitely go to the website, because you can go everywhere. You can get to know Simon, get to know John. But what do you want to take away as the best way to connect?
Well, John prefers a handwritten letter.
Carrier pigeon, maybe?
And I'll just give you the address, 23 Aardvark Close, Buxton by the Chestnut.
Okay.
Handwritten letter, fine 100 GSM paper.
Yeah. Simon's more up to date though, Joe. Yeah, you can send him a fax. He'll get back to you within 2 days.
I guarantee.
How do you spell fax, boys? Yeah.
Yeah, FAAS. But look, if you pushed, jump onto LinkedIn, was where I'm probably most active in a business sense.
Yep.
I'm the top Simon Banks. I'm the most handsome as well out of the 3 or 4. Easy to spot. But there is another Simon Banks in Australia.
Oh.
Who does a lot of government work. And I often get emails and I'll be like, hey, we're meeting the minister tomorrow. Hey, it's probably not me. And I get his travel itinerary a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's not me.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll make it really easy. I'll put it in the show notes, gents. Look, thank you so much for joining us. I don't actually want this conversation to end, because I feel on a personal level, I've traveled back to my 20 years ago living in London memory lane of good times. But, the reality hits that, I've got kids and no more shared house living. So thanks for the podcast, because people need to take a listen. I like the quirkiness. I like the banter. And it works well, gents. Don't change it. Don't get in the same room together. It works in different hemispheres.
I never want to be in the same room with you again, really. So
it just gets too messy. It's probably best left alone.
Okay. Gents, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us on.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.